So where do we start with the goodies that are in the tax code? Might we not start with the most profitable companies in the history of the planet? Do they really need this extra money that we give them by telling them they don't have to pay the taxes that other companies have to pay? How many quarters will we have where we read the headlines, record-breaking profits for big oil? How many times are we going to read that before we are willing to take the baby step, just the baby step of saying, maybe these tax goodies for big oil are not a good idea in light of our deficit and our debt. Maybe this is a good place to start. They made north of $35 billion in the last 3 months. Now, I know that there's all kinds of things that are being put out there to kind of hide behind as we cast this vote, because this is a tough vote, I think, for people who vote no. How do you explain to your constituents that are struggling around their kitchen table to figure out how they can afford to drive their kids to soccer practice? How do you explain to them that we think that instead of $125 billion, instead of $123 billion of profit big oil is going to make this year, they need to make 125? That's what this is. Instead of making 125 billion, north of 125 billion of profit this year, big oil is going to have to really suffer along with only 123 billion in profit. And that $2 billion that we want to take back from them is going to go towards the deficit. How do you explain that to people around their kitchen table? Now, this means the cost of fuel is going to go up. Everyone has debunked that. Really? Cost of fuel's gone up just fine, and they've got all those subsidies. I remember when oil was $55 a barrel, and they had all those subsidies. And by the way, all these subsidies didn't help them go out and do what they needed to do to keep the price of fuel down. I'll tell you what economic illiteracy is thinking that these companies, what about the free market I always hear about from the other side of the aisle? What about that free market? Why do they need our tax goodies to help them if this is truly a free market? And maybe they're right. Maybe we shouldn't pick on big oil. But what a great place to start. Frankly, if we can't take these things away from the most profitable companies in the history of the planet, how are we ever going to take them away from the mohair industry? I think economic illiteracy is to spend a lot of time talking about the debt and deficit and not willing to take this baby step to take back $2 billion a year that these companies get that they don't need and they're not using to hold down the price of gas. So I think this legislation is a real litmus test, because if we can't do this, then I question what we can do to right this ship that is all about the footprint of the federal government